In a busy downtown restaurant, the sound of clinking glasses and quiet laughter filled the air. But for one man that night, what seemed like an ordinary dinner would become a story no one could forget. The restaurant was called the Willow Room, one of those high-end places where suits outnumber smiles and respect depends on what's in your wallet. Behind the counter stood Michael, a young black waiter with a polite smile and tired eyes. He'd been on his feet since morning, serving tables and wiping down the same polished counters 100 times. But he never complained. Every tip counted. Every thank you mattered. That night, a new face walked in. Mr. Collins, a wealthy businessman in his late 40s, the kind of man whose presence demanded attention. Custom suit, gold watch, a sharp stare that looked through people instead of at them. Michael noticed him immediately and walked over. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Willow Room. Table for one?" Collins barely glanced at him. "Yes, corner seat, away from the noise." Michael nodded. "Of course, sir. Right this way." As he led the man to his seat, he extended his hand, a simple gesture of courtesy. "My name's Michael. I'll be your server tonight, sir." But Collins didn't take it. He just stared at the hand, then at Michael's face, and said coldly, "I don't shake hands with staff." The silence that followed cut through the room. Even the background music seemed to fade. Michael slowly pulled his hand back. "Of course, sir," he said softly. "Would you like to start with some water?" "Sparkling," Collins said without looking up. "And hurry up with the order. I don't have all night." As he turned away, he heard quiet murmurs from nearby tables. Some customers shook their heads, others pretended not to notice. It wasn't the first time something like this happened, but this one stung deeper. Still, Michael smiled. He carried on, his professionalism unshaken. That night, Michael went home exhausted but calm. He'd learned something in life that respect wasn't something you received, it was something you kept, even when others didn't give it. His mother used to say, "Son, the world may not treat you fair, but you decide how to respond." And that night, those words echoed louder than ever.
A few weeks passed. Mr. Collins returned to the Willow Room several times, always arrogant, always dismissive. He'd snap his fingers, call Michael boy, and once even complained, "You people are lucky to even have jobs here." Michael bit his tongue every time. He needed this job. Not for pride, but for purpose. He was saving to open a small food business of his own. A dream that kept him pushing through every insult, every long night. But life has a strange way of turning tables. One morning, the Willow Room buzzed with whispers. "You heard what happened to that Collins guy? His company's collapsing. Something about fraud." Michael didn't believe it at first until he saw it on the news. Collins Investments, once a shining symbol of success, was under investigation for tax fraud and money laundering. Dozens of employees were laid off. Collins's luxury cars were seized, his accounts frozen. Michael just sat there in the staff room staring at the TV in silence. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat. He just whispered to himself, "Life doesn't miss." A few more weeks passed. Collins disappeared from public view. No one knew where he went until the day everything came full circle. It was a Thursday morning. The restaurant had just opened, sunlight spilling through the windows. Michael was checking tables when the door creaked open. A man in a worn-out gray suit walked in, his shoes scuffed, his tie loose, his face pale and tired. Michael looked up and froze. It was Mr. Collins. But this time, he wasn't a customer. He was holding a resume. He walked up to the front desk, looking uneasy. His confidence was gone, replaced by a nervous tremor in his hands. The receptionist asked softly, "Can I help you, sir?" Collins cleared his throat. "Yes, I saw your hiring sign outside. I'm here to apply for a manager position." Michael stood still, watching from a distance. His heart raced, not with anger, but disbelief. The man who once looked down on him was now asking for a job in the same restaurant. The manager wasn't around that day. The receptionist looked at the application form and said, "You'll need to speak with our co-owner. He does most of the hiring now." Collins nodded nervously. "Of course, I'd appreciate that." The receptionist smiled. "His name's Michael. He'll be with you shortly." Collins blinked. "Michael?" "Yes, Michael Brooks, the new co-owner of the Willow Room." The color drained from Collins' face. He turned slowly, and there, walking out of the back office in a black suit and calm smile, was the same man he once refused to shake hands with. Michael paused, looked straight at him, and extended his hand again. "Mr. Collins, long time no see." The restaurant went silent. The moment stretched like a held breath. Collins' hand shook, his pride battling his shame. And this time, he reached out. Handshake effect. Michael smiled gently and said, "Funny how life works, isn't it?" But what Collins didn't know was that this meeting wasn't an accident. Someone had made sure their paths would cross again, and not just for revenge. Because sometimes, karma doesn't wait for the future. It shows up right on time.
The sound of rain tapped against the restaurant's glass walls. It was a slow Monday morning, and Michael sat behind his new desk, still getting used to the title co-owner. The framed certificate on the wall didn't just symbolize success. It symbolized revenge, wrapped in patience. As he looked over the interview list, one name made his pen freeze mid-air. Collins Davenport. Michael's heart skipped. The name felt like a ghost from another life. The same Collins who once looked at him with disgust, who refused his handshake like it carried disease, was now applying for a job here? He blinked twice. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe just another man with the same name. But as the door opened, the past walked right in. Collins stood there, his sharp suits replaced by a worn-out jacket, his confident grin traded for nervousness. His once polished shoes were scuffed. He looked smaller, defeated, like life had chewed him up and spat him out. Michael's mind flashed back to that humiliating night, the laughter, the sting of rejection, the mocking eyes of the wealthy man who told him, "People like you don't belong here." Now that same man stood before him, holding a crumpled resume. "Good morning," Collins said quietly, extending his hand. For a second, Michael just stared. The world felt poetic, too perfect. Then he slowly reached out, shaking the same hand that once rejected his. "Good morning, Mr. Davenport," he said calmly. "Please, have a seat." Collins' eyes flicked to Michael's nameplate. He froze. Michael Johnson, co-owner. A faint tremor ran through his hand. You work here?" Michael smiled faintly. "Not just work here, I run it." Silence filled the room like thunder waiting to break. Collins swallowed hard. I didn't realize." "That's all right," Michael interrupted softly. "Let's talk about why you're here today." For the next few minutes, Collins tried to speak about his business experience, his leadership skills, but his voice cracked with insecurity. He talked about losing his company, about betrayal, about debts and layoffs. Every word was an echo of karma. Michael listened quietly, emotions warring behind his calm eyes. He remembered the nights he went home ashamed after that rejection, the times he almost gave up. And now fate had reversed the stage. Finally, Michael leaned back and said, "You seem qualified. But before we make any decision, I want to ask you one question." Collins nodded, fidgeting. "Of course." Michael's gaze sharpened. Do you believe people deserve second chances, even if they once looked down on others? The room went still. Colin's eyes glistened. He hesitated, then said in a trembling voice, "Yes, because I've learned what it feels like to fall." Michael stared at him for a long moment. "Good answer," he said softly. "Let's continue this conversation tomorrow." As Colin stood to leave, he turned back. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Johnson, truly." Michael watched him go, a swirl of emotions inside him: anger, empathy, satisfaction, confusion. The power felt good, but the forgiveness felt heavier. When the door closed, Michael exhaled. His assistant walked in moments later. "You okay, sir?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah, just thinking." He looked out the window, where Collins was walking away under the rain, the same rain that once hid Michael's own tears. But as Collins disappeared down the street, Michael's phone buzzed. A text popped up from an unknown number. "You don't know what he did to others before you. Be careful, Michael." Michael sat in his office long after Collins had left. The rain had stopped, but his mind was still cloudy. The message glowed on his phone screen. "You don't know what he did to others before you. Be careful, Michael." He stared at it, wondering who sent it. The number was hidden. No name. Just a warning. Michael leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying every word Collins said during the interview. The apology, the humility, the regret. Something didn't add up. 2 days later, Collins returned for a follow-up interview. He wore the same gray jacket, freshly ironed this time. His voice was softer, his eyes more tired. "Mr. Johnson," he said quietly, "I'm grateful you even considered my application." Michael nodded, professional but distant. Everyone deserves a chance, that's what I believe. But inside he was torn. Was Collins truly sorry for his past, or was this another performance from a man used to manipulating others? That night, Michael met with Lena, one of the oldest staff members. She had worked at the restaurant even before he joined. Over a cup of coffee, she leaned closer and whispered, "I know that man, Collins Davenport. He owned this place before you." Michael froze. "What did you say?" Lena nodded. "He lost it years ago, after multiple lawsuits, discrimination cases, quiet settlements." Michael's hands clenched around his cup. "You mean he used to run this restaurant?" "Yes, and he wasn't kind to people like us, especially not to young black staff. Many quit because of him. He thought he was untouchable." Michael's jaw tightened. The weight of irony hit him like a storm. The man who once ruled this place was now asking him for a job. He looked down. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Lena sighed. "Because you deserved your peace. You built this business from nothing. You didn't need that shadow." Michael thanked her and left, but his mind raced all night. The next morning, he couldn't focus. The message, the lawsuits, the irony. Everything pointed to a painful truth. Collins's downfall wasn't random. It was the consequence of years of prejudice catching up with him. Later that afternoon, Collins arrived again. He seemed nervous, holding a manila folder close to his chest. "I know what you heard," he said before Michael could speak. "Yes, I made mistakes. I was arrogant, but losing everything, it changes a man." Michael looked at him carefully. "You were sued for discrimination." Collins nodded slowly. "Yes, and I lost everything. My house, my business, my family's respect. I've been trying to rebuild." He paused. "You don't have to forgive me, but I'm not that man anymore." Michael's expression didn't change. People always say that when they have nothing left. Collins looked down. "Maybe, but I'm not asking for pity. Just work." The silence between them was heavy. Michael stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "You once looked at me like I was beneath you. Now you're asking for a place here. Doesn't that feel strange to you?" Collins swallowed hard. "Every night. I think about it every night." For the first time, Michael saw genuine pain in the man's eyes. But still, something felt off. That night, he received another message. "He's not here to work. He's here for revenge." Michael sat up straight in bed. His phone buzzed again. A second message appeared. "Check the employee records, 2017. The next morning, Michael went into the archive room. Dusty folders lined the shelves. He found the old employee records from 2017, the year Collins was still in charge. One file stood out. Johnson, M. Michael opened it, and his heart sank. Inside was a termination notice, signed by Collins Davenport. Reason? Insubordination, unfit for public service. Michael remembered that day. He had been fired unfairly, humiliated in front of everyone, for refusing to serve a customer who called him a racial slur. And now, years later, the same man stood in his office asking for mercy. He sat there for a long moment, eyes wet, hands trembling slightly. Everything inside him screamed for revenge, to make Collins feel the same humiliation he once did. But another part of him whispered, "Be better. Don't become what he was."
That evening, Michael called Collins back for one final meeting. When Collins arrived, Michael didn't sit behind his desk. Instead, he stood by the window, hands behind his back. "You fired me once," Michael said quietly. Collins' face went pale. I remember. You wrote that I was unfit for service." Collins' voice cracked. "I was wrong. You were the best employee I ever had. I didn't see it then." Michael turned to face him. "And now?" Collins took a deep breath. "Now I see everything I destroyed. I can't change the past. I just want to work again, to start over." Michael studied him for a long time. The same man who once denied him dignity was now asking for it. He took a deep breath and said, "You'll start tomorrow, but not as a manager, as a cleaner." Collins nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you." As Collins left, Michael sat back down, still unsettled. Something about that second message haunted him. Later that night, his phone buzzed again. A new text appeared, this time with a photo. It showed Collins standing with another man in a dark parking lot. The message read, "They're not done with you yet." Michael's heart raced. He looked closer at the photo. The second man's face was blurred, but his build looked familiar, someone who worked in the restaurant. He turned off the phone slowly, staring into the night. The storm outside had returned, and deep down, he knew this wasn't over. He couldn't sleep that night. The rain outside had stopped, but inside his chest, the storm only grew louder. Michael sat in the dark, phone in hand, staring at that photo again. Collins, standing under a streetlight, shaking hands with a man whose face was blurred, unreadable, unfamiliar, but dangerous. Beneath it, one line, "They're not done with you yet." He zoomed in. The parking lot was the same one behind his restaurant. That meant the photo was recent, taken less than a week ago. Michael's mind raced. Was someone following him? Was Collins part of something bigger? Or was this just someone trying to scare him? By morning, he looked exhausted, but he walked into work as calm as ever. The kitchen was busy, the smell of garlic and fresh bread filling the air, but he couldn't focus. Every face he saw, every customer that smiled, he wondered if they knew something he didn't. Then his assistant knocked on his office door. "Sir, Collins is here to see you." Michael took a deep breath.
Send him in." Collins walked in carrying a small box in his hands. His clothes were plain, his posture low. "Mr. Miller," he began softly, "thank you again for giving me another chance. I wanted to give you something." He placed the box on the table. Michael hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a small military medal, dull with age. Collins swallowed hard. "That was my father's. He served same unit you did, I think. The 3rd Infantry Division?" Michael froze. "Your father?" Collins nodded. "Yes, he used to talk about a soldier named Miller. Said he was the one who saved his life in Kandahar." The air grew heavy. Michael sat back, the memory rushing back. Smoke, gunfire, and pulling a wounded man from the dirt under a burning sky. He whispered, "Your father's name was Richard Davenport?" Collins nodded. "Yes. He passed away 2 years ago. He always said he owed his life to a man named Miller. I didn't know it was you." The room fell silent. Michael looked down at the medal again, the past, suddenly clearer than ever. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," Collins said, voice breaking. "I was angry, lost. I ruined what my father stood for. When I saw you again, I didn't know how to face that shame." I sighed. "And the man in the photo?" Collins blinked. "Photo?" He turned the phone toward him. "This. Someone sent me this last night." Collins leaned in, his face twisting in confusion. "That's me, but I don't know who that is beside me." Michael narrowed his eyes. "You're sure?" Collins nodded quickly. "I swear. I was at the parking lot last week, but I don't remember anyone else there. I was just leaving after my shift." He watched his every movement, searching for a lie, but Collins' trembling hands told a different story. He was scared too. Then Michael's phone buzzed again. Another message. This one said, "You can't trust him. He's not who you think he is." Michael looked up, but Collins was already backing away, confused and nervous. "Mr. Miller, I don't know what's going on, but I promise I'm not lying." Michael's voice was calm but cold. "Go home, Collins. I'll call you tomorrow." As the man left the office, Michael stared at the screen again. The messages weren't random. Someone was watching both of them. Later that night, Michael drove to the old military base where his unit's records were stored. He had to know if Collins' story checked out. Inside the archives, he searched for Richard Davenport. He found the file, and his heart stopped. Attached inside was a photo, not of the father, but of Collins himself standing beside a military intelligence officer from years ago, the same blurred man in last night's photo. Michael's chest tightened. "It can't be," he whispered. The record showed that Collins had been discharged dishonorably under a false name for leaking information during a classified mission. The date matched. The same year Michael was ambushed overseas. The betrayal, the attack, the loss of his team, it all linked back. Collins hadn't just known his father's story, he had been part of the reason Michael almost died. Michael drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. The moment he entered his apartment, his lights flickered. Then his phone buzzed again. One message. No name, no number. Just one line that made his blood run cold. "He's coming for you tonight." Michael looked toward the window. A shadow moved outside. He stepped back slowly. Another text appeared. "You should have never hired him." The door handle started to shake. Michael turned off the lights and grabbed the baseball bat from behind the couch. His heart pounded so loud he could barely hear the rain starting up again outside. The door handle turned again, this time harder. Michael whispered, "Who's there?" Then a voice from outside, calm, familiar. "Michael, it's me. Open the door. We need to talk." It was Collins. Michael didn't move. His phone buzzed one last time. That's not Collins. What would you do if your past came knocking at your door?
Comment below with your thoughts, and if you want to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and don't miss out what happened next. Trust me, you won't believe the ending.
The door handle stopped rattling. Silence, sharp and total, hung over the dark apartment. Only the faint hum of rain against the window filled the void. Michael's hand trembled around the bat, his breath shallow. That voice, he was sure it was Colin's. But something about it was off, too calm, too measured. He took a step closer, straining to listen. "Michael," the voice repeated softly, "I didn't mean for it to end like this. Open the door, please." Michael's pulse thundered in his ears. He whispered to himself, "In like what?" He leaned toward the peephole. Outside, only the dim hallway light flickered. The silhouette stood still, broad shoulders, head lowered slightly. It looked like Colin's, but something in that stance felt unnatural, almost military. He tightened his grip on the bat. "Say something only Collins would know," he shouted. Then the voice on the other side said, "Table 6, steak undercooked. You smiled when I shouted. You said, 'At least you can afford mistakes.' That was the first day we met." Michael's throat went dry. That was true. Still, something deep inside warned him, "Don't open it." He backed away slowly, phone in hand, typing 911. But before he could hit call, the door burst open. Michael swung the bat. A shadow moved fast, dodging to the side. The bat hit the doorframe with a loud crack. The intruder lunged, tackling him to the ground. The two men struggled, grunting, crashing into the coffee table. "Stop!" the voice yelled. "It's me! It's Collins!" Michael froze mid-grapple, his chest heaving. In the glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds, he finally saw the face. It was Collins. Eyes wild, face soaked from the rain, breathing hard. "What the hell are you doing here?" Michael shouted. Collins pushed himself up, hands raised. "You wouldn't answer my calls. I had to tell you before they do." "Before who does?" Michael demanded. Collins looked toward the window, as if expecting someone to burst through at any second. "You found the records, didn't you? The discharge files." Michael nodded slowly. "I know who you really are, Collins. You were part of something. Intelligence. You lied about your father." Collins gave a humorless laugh. "You think I was the villain? Michael, I was protecting people like you." Michael frowned. "Protecting? You destroyed people's lives. You—" "No," Collins interrupted, his voice cracking. "It wasn't me. It was him." He pointed toward the phone still lying on the floor, the one that had sent that eerie message. "He's coming for you tonight." Michael's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Collins took a deep breath, his voice trembling. "The man in that photo with me, the blurred one, that's Colonel Rayner, my former superior. He's alive, and he's the one sending those messages." Michael blinked. "But why me? Why warn me?" "Because," Collins said, "you were the last on his list. You weren't supposed to find out what we did overseas." Michael's chest tightened. He remembered the medal, the photo, the stories about classified missions. It all clicked now. "You and Rayner worked black ops. You covered up operations, and anyone who tried to expose it disappeared," Collins finished for him, whispering. The apartment went dead silent. Michael's phone buzzed again. He picked it up. Another text. "He's already there." Michael looked up sharply. "He's here." Collins moved toward the window and peered through the blinds. A black SUV sat idling on the street below. Inside, two silhouettes. "We have to go, now," Collins said. Michael hesitated. Every instinct told him to run. But another part of him, the soldier within, refused to back down. "I'm not running anymore," he said quietly. "Not from the truth." Collins turned to him, desperation in his eyes. "You don't understand, Michael. This isn't about the restaurant, or me, or your father's medal. This is about a file your father leaked years ago. They think you have it." "My father?" Michael said, stunned. "He died in combat."
Collins shook his head. That's what they told you. But he didn't die. He disappeared after Raynor's last mission. That medal you found, it wasn't just a token. It's a cracking marker. Raynor's been looking for it. Michael stared at the medal on the desk. Suddenly, it beeped faintly. A tiny red light blinked. He's found us, Collins whispered. Before Michael could react, headlights flashed through the window. A loud crash. The front door shattered inward as masked men stormed in. Michael ducked behind the counter, adrenaline surging. Collins grabbed the bat and swung wildly, knocking one of them down. Gunfire echoed. Sparks flew from a lamp. "Run!" Collins shouted, but Michael stayed low, crawling toward the metal. He grabbed it and yanked off the small tractor embedded in its back. He threw it toward the window. It burst through the glass, landing on the wet street below. The men outside turned instantly toward the blinking red light. Michael and Collins took their chance and bolted down the back stairwell. Rain poured over them as they reached the alley. The SUV's engine roared, reversing to chase them. Collins shoved Michael forward. "Go, I'll hold them off." "You'll die," Michael yelled. Collins gave a broken smile. "Maybe. That's the only way I make things right." The last thing Michael saw was Collins stepping out into the rain, shouting something he couldn't hear. The SUV skidded, headlights blinding. A shot rang out. Then silence. Michael kept running, disappearing into the maze of city lights. Hours later, the police arrived to find the alley empty. Only a trail of blood, and the medal remained. Weeks passed. The restaurant reopened, but Michael never saw Collins again. Some said he fled the country. Others whispered that the man in the SUV took him. Michael didn't speak of that night, but one morning he found an envelope at the restaurant door. Inside was a new medal, engraved with the words, "For the ones who fought for truth." He smiled faintly, then looked into the camera security feed above the counter, knowing someone was still watching. And for the first time, Michael looked right back. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It just finds a new target. If this story gave you chills, hit subscribe for more real-life inspired thrillers where every handshake hides a secret. Turn on the bell, because the next story might just begin with you.